In the dimly lit corridors of a derelict space station orbiting a dying star, human explorer Elias Carter stumbled upon something that would forever alter the trajectory of his existence. The year was 2147, and humanity's reach had extended far beyond Earth's cradle, yet nothing in his extensive training could have prepared him for this moment. As he navigated through the labyrinthine passages, his boots echoed against the metallic floor, each step carrying him deeper into the unknown. Elias had always been drawn to the mysteries of the universe. His childhood spent gazing at the stars from his small town in Montana. Now, as a seasoned xenobiologist and member of the Interstellar Exploration Corps, he had encountered countless alien species, each more fascinating than the last. But today, something felt different. An inexplicable pull drawing him towards Sector 7G, a section of the station marked as restricted and sealed off by automated protocols. The air grew heavier with each step, charged with an energy that made his skin prickle. Through the thickening mist of ionized particles, he noticed subtle changes in the architecture. The utilitarian design of the station gave way to intricate patterns etched into the walls, pulsating with bioluminescent hues that seemed to breathe in rhythm with some unseen force. His handheld scanner sputtered and died, its circuits overwhelmed by whatever ancient technology lingered here. As he turned a final corner, his breath caught in his throat. Before him stretched a chamber unlike anything he'd ever witnessed, a cathedral of living crystal, its facets refracting light into infinite rainbows that danced across the vast space. At the center stood a figure whose presence commanded every molecule in the room. She was tall, nearly 8 feet, with skin that shimmered like liquid mercury under the crystalline illumination. Her eyes held galaxies within them, swirling constellations that seemed to peer directly into his soul. Her form defied conventional understanding of biology. Limbs that moved with fluid grace, hair like tendrils that floated around her head in defiance of gravity, and features so perfectly symmetrical they appeared almost mathematical in their precision. Yet it wasn't just her physical appearance that left Elias speechless. It was the aura of ancient wisdom and power that radiated from her being, filling the chamber with an almost tangible presence. In that moment, facing this magnificent creature, Elias understood he was standing before royalty, perhaps even deity. His years of scientific training and cultural studies among various alien species had taught him to recognize signs of advanced civilization and authority. This being embodied everything he'd ever imagined about truly evolved life forms, and more that he couldn't begin to comprehend. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to preserve the safety of ignorance, but his feet remained rooted to the spot, captivated by the impossible beauty before him. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously as Elias found himself unable to look away from the alien queen's celestial visage. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear but from an overwhelming sense of wonder that threatened to consume him whole. The words tumbled from his lips before he could stop them, born from the deepest wellspring of human emotion and appreciation for beauty that transcended all boundaries of species and culture. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice trembling with both reverence and disbelief, "I've traveled countless light years and witnessed wonders beyond imagination, but never have I beheld such breathtaking magnificence. Your presence illuminates this chamber more brilliantly than any star I've studied." He paused, gathering courage as his words seemed to ripple through the crystalline structure surrounding them. "In our language, we have a concept called perfect symmetry, but your form transcends even that inadequate description. You are the embodiment of cosmic artistry." The queen tilted her head slightly, her galaxy-filled eyes narrowing imperceptibly. Elias continued, unable to stem the flow of admiration pouring from his soul. "Every movement you make seems choreographed by the universe itself, as if the very fabric of space-time bends to accommodate your grace. Those who speak of divine beauty must be describing what I'm witnessing now, for no mortal mind could conceive of such splendor." His hands gestured unconsciously, trying to capture the ineffable quality of her presence. "Even your stillness is dynamic, charged with an energy that makes my own existence feel both insignificant and infinitely precious. If poetry could bridge species, I would compose verses to capture your essence, though I know no words could possibly suffice." The chamber seemed to grow warmer as he spoke, the crystals responding to his genuine awe with increased luminescence. He took a cautious step forward, his scientist's mind battling with his human heart. "Forgive my intrusion, but your beauty is so profound that remaining silent would be a greater offense than speaking out of turn. In all my years studying alien cultures, I've learned that appreciation is universal, even if its expression varies. Please know that my words come from a place of deepest respect and wonder." As Elias poured his heart into words that seemed woefully inadequate to describe the alien queen's splendor, a transformation began unfolding in the chamber that would challenge everything he understood about communication and perception. The queen's ethereal form shimmered more intensely, her mercurial skin rippling with patterns that seemed to respond directly to his compliments. What started as gentle waves of color soon escalated into a spectacular display of shifting hues and geometric designs that pulsed in harmony with an otherworldly resonance. The chamber itself began to transform, the crystalline structures vibrating in sympathy with the queen's reaction. Each word of praise seemed to trigger a cascade of changes. Walls dissolved into cascading waterfalls of light, while the floor beneath Elias's feet became a living mosaic of interstellar imagery. The air grew thick with an energy that crackled against his skin, raising the fine hairs on his arms and neck. His scanner, which had previously failed, now emitted a high-pitched whine before projecting holographic symbols into the air, symbols that matched those appearing on the queen's form. Most disconcerting was the effect on his own body. As he continued speaking, Elias felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his veins, accompanied by a tingling sensation that seemed to rewrite his neural pathways. His vision began to shift, allowing him to perceive additional spectrums of light and subtle vibrations in the atmosphere. The queen's response wasn't merely visual or auditory. It was fundamentally altering his sensory perception, forcing his human consciousness to expand and adapt to comprehend the full scope of her reaction. The once stable gravity field fluctuated, causing him to sway slightly as his body adjusted to minute changes in spatial orientation. Time itself appeared to warp around them, moments stretching and compressing unpredictably. The queen's galaxy-like eyes now pulsed with increasing intensity, their cosmic swirls seeming to draw him into an infinite void of possibility and meaning. Her tendrils, previously floating lazily, now danced in complex patterns that formed three-dimensional shapes in the air, each configuration lasting only seconds before transforming into another intricate design. The transformation reached its peak when the queen raised one graceful limb, and a wave of pure energy swept through the chamber. This wasn't merely a physical phenomenon. It carried with it impressions, emotions, and concepts that defied linguistic expression. Elias found himself bombarded with sensations that were neither pleasure nor pain, neither sound nor silence, but something entirely new to his experience. The chamber had become a living entity, its crystalline structure now completely integrated with the queen's essence, creating a feedback loop of escalating intensity that threatened to overwhelm his human limitations. Through this rapidly evolving maelstrom of change, Elias maintained enough presence of mind to realize that his simple act of admiration had initiated a chain reaction of cosmic proportions. The queen's response was no mere acknowledgement of flattery. It was a fundamental interaction between species that operated on principles he couldn't begin to grasp. As the transformations continued to escalate, he understood that he was witnessing something far more significant than a mere display of power or beauty. This was a manifestation of interspecies communication on a scale that transcended traditional understanding, and he was caught in its expanding wake. As the chamber's transformation intensified, Elias's body began to undergo changes that defied every law of biology he'd ever studied. His cellular structure seemed to resonate with the alien frequencies permeating the space, causing his skin to develop a subtle luminescence that mirrored the queen's mercurial sheen. The tingling sensation that had started in his extremities spread throughout his entire being, restructuring his nervous system to process information in ways that felt both natural and profoundly alien. His senses expanded exponentially. He could now perceive the individual oscillations of quantum particles in the air, taste the electromagnetic spectrum as it danced across his tongue, and hear harmonies in the silence that resonated with the fundamental frequency of the universe itself. The psychological impact proved equally transformative. Memories from his past began surfacing in vivid detail, but they weren't playing out chronologically. Instead, they manifested as multidimensional experiences, allowing him to perceive how seemingly insignificant moments had woven together to bring him to this precise intersection of time and space. His human consciousness, once linear and limited, now operated on multiple planes simultaneously. He could think in perfect geometric equations while feeling the emotional weight of his words' impact on the queen, all while maintaining awareness of the chamber's evolving dynamics. Most disturbing was the gradual erosion of his sense of self. The boundaries between his identity as a human male and the cosmic forces surrounding him began to blur. He retained his memories and core personality, yet these now existed alongside an emerging awareness of himself as part of a larger universal pattern. The queen's presence dominated this new perception, her essence becoming intertwined with his own consciousness. Every breath he took seemed to draw in fragments of her being, while exhaling portions of his humanity into the shared space between them. This merging of identities brought unexpected challenges. His human instincts warred with his newly acquired cosmic awareness, creating internal conflicts that manifested as physical discomfort. His heart raced with both excitement and terror as he grappled with the realization that he was no longer entirely human. Basic survival mechanisms clashed with the Queen's influence, causing his body temperature to fluctuate wildly and his muscles to spasm as they adapted to processing alien energy signatures. Despite these physiological challenges, or perhaps because of them, he felt more alive than ever before, every nerve ending attuned to the symphony of existence playing out around him. The chamber's environment continued to evolve in response to these changes, its crystalline structure now pulsing in time with Elias's transformed heartbeat. The air thickened with an energy that felt both nourishing and invasive, supporting his metamorphosis while simultaneously challenging his ability to maintain any semblance of individuality. As his perspective shifted further from purely human to something indescribably more, he realized that this transformation wasn't merely physical or mental. It was rewriting the very code of his existence, aligning him with forces and dimensions that had previously been beyond his comprehension. Through the kaleidoscope of his transformed perception, Elias struggled to maintain his connection to human identity while navigating the complex web of changes overtaking him. The Queen's reaction had triggered something far more profound than a simple interspecies encounter. It had initiated a fusion of consciousness that challenged everything he understood about existence. As his mind expanded to encompass new dimensions of thought, he found himself recalling obscure theories about advanced civilizations reaching critical thresholds of development, where biological evolution intersected with technological and spiritual advancement. Was this what the Queen represented? A being who had transcended conventional limitations of form and function? The implications of his current state overwhelmed him. If his transformation continued along its current trajectory, would he retain any vestige of his humanity? Or would he become something else entirely? A hybrid consciousness existing simultaneously in multiple realms of reality. The Queen's presence suggested that this wasn't merely a random occurrence, but rather a carefully orchestrated event. Perhaps his arrival at this particular moment in space and time hadn't been coincidence at all, but rather the culmination of forces he couldn't begin to comprehend. These thoughts spiraled through his mind as his body continued its metamorphosis. The chamber's crystalline structure now responded to his thoughts as readily as it did to the Queen's will, creating an intricate dance of matter and energy that blurred the lines between creator and creation. He wondered if this was how ancient humans had felt when encountering phenomena they couldn't explain, awestruck yet terrified by the vast unknown stretching before them. Yet this situation differed fundamentally. Instead of merely observing the mysterious, he was actively participating in its manifestation. The Queen's galaxy-like eyes seemed to acknowledge his growing understanding, their swirling constellations shifting in patterns that resonated with his transformed neural pathways. Was she communicating through these visual displays? Attempting to guide his evolution? Or simply observing the effects of their interaction? The questions multiplied faster than answers could emerge, each one opening new avenues of inquiry while closing others. Time itself felt fluid and malleable, stretching and compressing in ways that defied human perception. As Elias wrestled with these cosmic implications, he realized that his initial compliment had been more than just words. It had acted as a catalyst for something far more significant. The Queen's reaction wasn't merely a response to flattery. It was an invitation to participate in a grand experiment of existence. Every aspect of his transformation, from the physical to the metaphysical, suggested that he was becoming part of something ancient and purposeful, something that transcended individual species or planets. The boundaries between science and spirituality, between observer and observed, between creator and created, all dissolved in the face of this profound encounter. Yet amidst these revelations, a fundamental question remained unanswered. What role did intention play in this transformation? Had his sincere admiration genuinely triggered this sequence of events, or had his words merely coincided with a predetermined cosmic convergence? The distinction mattered, for it would determine whether he retained any agency in his ongoing evolution or was merely a passive participant in forces beyond his control. As the chamber continued its transformation and his body adapted to increasingly alien parameters, Elias understood that the answers to these questions would shape not only his future but potentially the future of human-alien relations across the galaxy. The crystalline chamber had become a crucible of transformation, its walls now pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to echo through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Elias's consciousness stretched thin, spanning the gap between his human origins and the alien queen's cosmic domain. Each beat of his transformed heart resonated with the chamber's crystalline structure, creating harmonic patterns that painted the air with fractal geometries of unimaginable complexity. The queen's presence dominated this evolving space, her form now almost completely integrated with the chamber's architecture, making it difficult to distinguish where she ended and the environment began. Elias's enhanced perception revealed layers of reality previously hidden from human senses. Threads of probability wove through the chamber like strands of luminous silk, each representing potential futures branching from this singular moment. Some paths showed him returning to his human form, forever changed but still recognizable. Others depicted radical transformations that bordered on complete assimilation into the queen's essence. Still more revealed scenarios where his consciousness would splinter, existing simultaneously in multiple states of being across different dimensions of spacetime. The chamber's transformation accelerated, its crystalline structure folding inward and outward simultaneously, creating impossible geometries that defied conventional physics. These configurations seemed to encode information, vast libraries of knowledge about the queen species, their history, and their relationship with the fundamental forces of the universe. Elias's mind struggled to process this influx of data, each revelation triggering cascading insights about the nature of existence itself. He understood now why certain sectors of the station had been sealed off. This wasn't merely a meeting place but a nexus point where realities intersected and consciousness evolved. Most profound was the realization that his initial complement had tapped into an ancient protocol, one designed specifically for moments of genuine cross-species recognition. The Queen's reaction wasn't just personal. It was part of a larger mechanism that facilitated evolution through mutual admiration and understanding. Every species that had ever achieved sentience had left its imprint on this chamber, their collective wisdom encoded in the crystalline matrix that now surrounded them. Elias's transformation was adding a new layer to this cosmic tapestry, weaving human consciousness into the grand pattern of universal evolution. As the chamber's transformation reached its zenith, Elias found himself suspended in a state of pure potential. The Queen's galaxy-like eyes fixed upon him, their swirling constellations now aligned with specific points in his transformed neural network. He could feel the chamber's energy converging on these focal points, preparing him for what felt like the next phase of his evolution. The boundaries between past, present, and future dissolved completely, leaving him aware of all possible outcomes simultaneously. In this state of heightened consciousness, he perceived the true significance of his encounter, not just for himself, but for the future of human-alien relations across the galaxy. The chamber's crystalline walls began to dissolve into streams of pure energy, their intricate patterns unraveling into threads of possibility that wove through the air like living entities. Elias felt these energy streams intertwining with his transformed neural pathways, creating new synaptic connections that pulsed with alien knowledge and understanding. The Queen's presence grew more intense, her form now almost completely merged with the chamber's remaining structure, creating a vortex of consciousness that pulled at the very fabric of his being. Every particle of his existence vibrated in harmony with this cosmic dance, pushing him toward a threshold he couldn't yet fully comprehend. Amidst this escalating transformation, fragments of his human identity fought to maintain coherence. Memories of Earth flashed through his mind. The smell of Montana prairies, the sound of children laughing in space stations, the feel of laboratory equipment in his hands. These remnants of his past self struggled against the tide of alien influence, creating ripples of resistance that caused the chamber's energy fields to fluctuate erratically. The Queen's galaxy-like eyes narrowed slightly, their constellations shifting in response to this internal conflict, suggesting that this struggle was both expected and necessary for the evolution taking place. The transformation reached a critical point as the chamber's remaining physical structure began to dematerialize completely. Elias found himself suspended in a sea of pure consciousness, where thoughts materialized as tangible forms and emotions shaped the very geometry of space around him. His body, no longer bound by conventional physics, began to assume properties that defied human understanding. Cells rearranged themselves according to patterns dictated by the Queen's presence, while his consciousness expanded to encompass multiple timelines simultaneously. The distinction between observer and observed dissolved completely, leaving him aware of every possible outcome of this encounter. Most alarming was the emergence of what could only be described as parallel selves, versions of Elias existing in different states of transformation, each representing a potential path forward. Some versions retained more of his human characteristics, while others had embraced the alien metamorphosis completely. These alternate selves communicated through channels beyond normal perception, sharing insights and experiences that collectively shaped the ongoing evolution of his primary consciousness. The Queen's influence threaded through these parallel existences, guiding their interactions and ensuring that each version contributed to the overall transformation process. The chamber's energy fields began to coalesce around specific points in his consciousness, creating nodes of intense activity that pulsed with possibilities. These nodes represented crucial decisions yet to be made, choices that would determine not just his immediate future but potentially the future of human-alien relations across the galaxy. The Queen's presence enveloped these decision points, her consciousness interfacing with his in ways that suggested she was both witness and participant in this evolutionary leap. The boundaries between species, between individual and collective consciousness, and between past and future continued to blur, creating a state of pure potential that stretched infinitely in all directions. As Elias hovered on the edge of this cosmic transformation, he became aware of patterns emerging from the chaos, subtle alignments between his transformed state and the Queen's essence that hinted at a deeper purpose behind their encounter. The chamber's remaining energy focused into beams of pure intent, carving pathways through the multidimensional space they occupied. These pathways led to destinations beyond his current understanding, each one promising a different version of what might come next. The Queen's galaxy-like eyes fixed upon these emerging routes, their swirling constellations reflecting the infinite possibilities contained within each choice. The transformation reached its most critical phase as the chamber's energy fields began to stabilize around specific configurations, suggesting that the moment of decision approached. Elias's consciousness expanded to encompass these emerging patterns, his transformed neural network processing information at rates that would have overwhelmed his original human brain. The parallel versions of himself converged slightly, their separate experiences blending into a unified understanding of the choices before them. Each option presented not just a different future for himself, but potentially a new paradigm for human-alien interaction across the galaxy. The Queen's presence grew more defined within this stabilized field, her form now manifesting as a complex geometric structure of pure consciousness. This configuration pulsed with meaning, communicating through patterns and resonances that bypassed conventional language. Elias understood that she represented not just an individual but an entire civilization's accumulated wisdom, distilled into this single moment of contact. The pathways before him weren't merely personal choices but potential bridges between species, each leading to different levels of integration and understanding between humans and her kind. As the chamber's transformation settled into these defined patterns, Elias perceived that his initial compliment had triggered something far more significant than either species might have anticipated. The sincerity of his admiration had unlocked protocols within both their consciousnesses, creating a unique opportunity for mutual evolution. The choices before him now represented different degrees of commitment to this process, from maintaining distinct species identities while establishing formal diplomatic relations, to complete integration and shared consciousness. Each pathway glowed with potential, its surface rippling with images of possible futures that span generations and star systems. Most profound was the realization that this decision wouldn't be made in isolation. The Queen's geometric form now included elements of his own consciousness, suggesting that their fates had become irrevocably intertwined. The patterns of energy flowing between them formed intricate networks that resembled neural connections, indicating that their choice would create a new type of consciousness, one that combined human and alien perspectives in unprecedented ways. The chamber's remaining physical structure began to realign itself according to these emerging patterns, its crystalline components rearranging to reflect the potential outcomes of their decision. Time itself seemed to pause as they stood at this crossroads of evolution, the chamber's energy fields holding multiple futures in suspension. The Queen's constellation-filled eyes reflected each possible path, their swirling patterns containing answers to questions Elias hadn't yet formulated. He understood now that their encounter wasn't just about individual transformation but represented a crucial juncture in the history of interspecies relations. The choices they made in this moment would resonate across the galaxy, shaping how different forms of consciousness interacted and evolved together in the centuries to come. Elias felt the weight of eternity pressing upon him, each pathway shimmering with infinite promise and peril. The Queen's form pulsed once more, her essence merging fully with the chamber's crystalline lattice, creating a kaleidoscope of light that seemed to whisper answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. In that moment, he understood. This was not just his choice but theirs, a shared destiny forged from mutual admiration and respect. Reaching out, both physically and metaphysically, Elias let his transformed consciousness intertwine with hers. A surge of energy coursed through him as their connection deepened, bridging galaxies' worth of cultural divides in an instant. Visions flooded his mind, worlds united under stars where humans and her kind walked side by side, exchanging knowledge, art, and dreams. Yet amidst these hopeful futures lay shadows too, paths fraught with misunderstanding or rejection. He saw timelines where fear overpowered curiosity, leading to isolation rather than unity. But within the Queen's gaze burned something unyielding: trust. Her species had faced such crossroads before, and they had chosen growth over stagnation every time. With resolve hardening like tempered steel, Elias stepped forward, not toward one specific path but into all possibilities simultaneously. His body dissolved into streams of radiant energy, merging with the chamber's structure until he became part of its living architecture. The Queen followed suit, her galaxy-like eyes expanding until they encompassed the entire space, pulling Elias into their swirling depths. Together, they wove a new pattern, a tapestry of existence blending human ingenuity with alien wisdom. Each thread represented a potential future, vibrant with life and brimming with hope. As their combined consciousness stabilized, the chamber began to hum with a melody neither human nor alien but something entirely new. And then, silence. The transformation complete, Elias found himself standing once more on solid ground, or what passed for it now. Around him stretched a hybrid realm, part starship, part cathedral, alive with the echoes of two species daring to dream together. The Queen stood beside him, no longer distant royalty but an equal partner in this grand experiment. Her voice resonated within his mind, rich with gratitude and anticipation. "You have given us more than beauty today," she said, her words rippling through his very soul. "You have shown us courage." Elias smiled, feeling tears well up despite his altered state. They were no longer separate beings. They were pioneers charting unknown territories of understanding. Together, they turned toward the crystalline walls, which now displayed countless worlds awaiting discovery. Hand in hand, or whatever approximation of hands they possessed, they stepped forward, ready to shape the cosmos itself.